College students are faced with challenges day in and day out. Some would argue the best challenge associated with college is to graduate. While this proves to be true, the real challenge awaits students after graduation, 6 months after to be exact. 6 months after graduation, students who borrow federal loans are expected to start paying them back, affecting 60% of undergraduates. As a graduating senior, I'm included in that 60%, and when I graduate in December, I will start paying my loans back. I have done countless research to find the best way to repay my loans so I don't experience a financial hardship. I recommend that all students have an individualized plan to repay their loans to eliminate their debt as soon as possible. It's crucial for students to be aware of what they owe. The challenges of paying off debt after graduation can be overwhelming. Debt acquired from student loans can impact a student's entire future and everything in it. Being aware of your student loan debt and how to manage that debt is the first step in maximizing your financial future. Student loan debt is a serious consideration for those who borrow. The average amount borrowed in education loans was in federal loans, making up 87%. All students should keep a record of how much they owe and how the interest is calculated. If students fail to keep a record, they may have no idea how much money they've borrowed. This will not only adversely affect your future financially, but it can cause emotional and physical problems as well. Recently, I spoke with a former EKU grad who is $40,000 in debt from federal student loans. She has a job, yet is still unable to pay the minimum monthly payments and account for her rent and utilities. As a result, she had no other choice than to move back in with her parents in order to make the payments. Student loans have also affected her personal goals. She intended to get married next spring. However, her financial situation will put her plans on hold for several years. Like many of Americans, she is forced to make changes in her life as a direct result of student loan debt that she thought college would have prepared her for. She went to college, as many do, in hopes for a more stable financial future. Unfortunately, at this time, this is not the case. According to Robert Shireman, director of the Project on Student Loan Debt, nearly 8% of graduating seniors in 2004 carried student loans of more than $40,000. The Higher Education Act, implemented in 1993, made it easier for students to qualify for need-based aid, raised loan limits, and made unsubsidized loans available to students whose family incomes were too high for them to qualify for need-based aid. This allows students to borrow more money and not realize the full impact until after graduation. The U.S. Department of Education, students can borrow more money now than they ever could. This can create a snowball effect, leaving all unpaid loans due almost right after graduation. Graduates are more likely to be searching for a job after college than to have one waiting for them. Even with a job, low salaries are understandable, and this makes repaying student loans even harder. This leaves students unable to pay for monthly student loan bills and still keep their rent and utility agreements, forcing some graduates with no choice but to stop making payments on student loans. There are serious consequences when leaving student loans unpaid. Skipping payments or not paying at all can lead to a decrease in your credit score, hurting your entire financial future. This affects the graduate's ability to buy a home or even secure a good mortgage rate. Now we understand how student loan debt will affect us in all different ways. Let's further consider the burden of student loan debt and how students can remain in good standing with the student loan companies to minimize their overall debt. According to the National Center of Education Statistics, 13% of total income is to be applied to pay off student loan debt per year. The median annual earnings with a bachelor's degree are $47,000 per year. This means you would have to contribute over $6,000 towards your student loan debt per year. People making low salaries understandably have a harder time paying back loans, and this can make repayment burdensome. The lower the income category, the greater the debt will be because it takes longer to repay. Among graduates repaying their loans, those with a debt burden of less than 5% were more likely than those with a debt burden of 17% or more to have mortgage, rent, or auto loan payments, and when they did, the amounts they paid were generally larger than those who had a high debt burden. As student loan payments used up an increasing portion of people's salaries, the graduates' ability to take on other financial obligations were affected. Among 1999 and 2000 graduates with federal loans, 93% still owed on these loans a year later. Among these borrowers, the average amount still owed on their federal loans was $15,100. Student loan payments used up an increasing portion of people's salaries, affecting their willingness to take on other financial obligations. A recent poll of more than 1,500 college graduates between the ages of 12 and 35 by Matthew Greenwald Associates gives some insight to the challenges faced by college grads as they struggle to pay back their student loans. Because of the burden of such payments, 44% said they delayed buying a house, 28% postponed having children, 27% skipped medical or dental procedures, and 32% said their loans forced them to move back in to their parents' home or live there longer than they had expected. All students with loan debt should seek to minimize overall borrowing. Becoming familiar with your loan provider is crucial. Also, making budget cuts while in school can decrease the amount of student loan money you borrow. Continuing to make budget cuts after graduation will help you repay your loans faster. Students should be familiar with their loan provider and identify the amount of financial aid needed before borrowing one dime. Adding up your total college expenses doesn't sound like much fun. However, this can greatly help you to identify your need so you can prevent unnecessary borrowing. Grab a calculator and check with the financial aid department at your school to determine your total cost of attendance. Keep in mind that you'll also have to figure in your cost of travel, books, rental expenses, and computer supplies. Knowing your debt before you owe it is a big step in curbing your financial burden when you graduate. Make budget cuts everywhere you can. If you have a cell phone, as most of us do, search for better service plans that reduce your monthly payment. Cut out things you don't really need, like cable. Limit yourself to eating out once per month instead of going to your favorite coffee place every day. Make coffee at home to reduce unnecessary spending. Know who you're borrowing money from. Many students borrow loan money and do not know who the loan provider is. The loan provider will be handling all payments. Therefore, it is imperative to know who you are borrowing money from and at what cost. It's vital to know and understand the interest rates being applied to loans. Interest rates are variable and can change quickly. For this reason, it's important to understand how your loan company applies interest rates. Some companies offer locked-in rates, but if you don't ask, you may never know this. Communication with your loan company could help you save money in the long run. Student loans affect every person who has borrowed from a lender, and I am no exception. I will be graduating in December, and 6 months after that date, I will be required to start paying back my student loans. Fortunately, I did keep a record of how much I owe, preventing future emotional and physical distress. I have always kept in contact with my loan providers and communicate with them regularly. This has given me the advantage of understanding exactly what I owe and what to expect when I start repaying my loans. I recommend that all students have an individualized plan to repay their loans to eliminate their debt as soon as possible. The challenge of paying off student loan debt can be overwhelming to anyone, even those who are prepared. That's why it's extremely important to identify the financial aid needed to minimize your overall borrowing. Developing good financial habits while in school will help you for the rest of your life.